This is KLEAN Radio.
And hello, America. Welcome to KLEAN Radio. I'm Pat O'Brien, your host tonight. Jude will be back. Got the night off. And we have lots to get to tonight. There's always lots to get to when it comes to recovery. Before we get to it, just a quick anecdote. I was in New York a few weeks ago, and a homeless guy came up to me, and he said, he recognized me, and he said, Mr. O'Brien, can I borrow a cigarette? And I said, yeah, which is always irritating. So I gave him a cigarette. And he said, do you have a light? And I said, sure. So I gave him a light. Then he said, can I also borrow $1? I said, is there anything else you want? He said, can I borrow $1? And I said, well, what else can I give you? And he said, my life back. And that's kind of the way things have been around this country lately. A lot of people looking for a way to get back to their life. Joining us now is our regular Andrew Spanswick. Hi, Andrew.
Hey, how's it going, Pat?
Addiction and mental health expert and my friend, and out enjoying the weather today.
Yeah, it was beautiful. I walked my dog in the sun. She got all wet.
It was cold here. Am I just a baby?
Yeah, because it was hot for me.
It was? It was 52 degrees.
I don't know. I was kind of hot. I don't know. It was really
kind of hot. I mean, no,
Pat, you should save that for later.
We have a great guest tonight, a dear friend of mine, Dr. Wendy Walsh, and I. Do I have to call you doctor?
Yes, you do.
Oh,
no, I'm joking.
Right.
Only my mother would call me doctor if she were alive.
Well, God bless her. Dr. Walsh. Wendy and I hosted a show for about 1 million years together called How They Do That. And I think it's still on somewhere.
There's video of it all over the internet.
Yeah,
because people have been sending it to me today.
It was with my hair is orange in those videos. So Wendy and I spent long days together every day, and I write about all these women I worked with in my book, which is called "I'll Be Back Right After This." Yep. And Wendy didn't make the cut because she was probably the best woman I've ever worked with. Hi, Wendy.
I'm actually reading this chapter 17 called Girls, by the way. I can't wait to get home in my bed and read about all these women in your life.
Wendy's a relationship expert, so Andrew, you and I might have 1,000 questions
I'm
for her.
scared to even speak.
We need you to speak.
Already we need to analyze about you and your dog.
I'm really worried. Yeah, my dog and I are very close.
So what we're about here is recovery, and recovery is a big word. I mean, so many things, and my credentials are... Is it my credentials are, right, doctor?
If there's more than one credential, then yes, it's R.
Hopefully.
Don't patronize me. I've been through it. I'm an alcoholic. I'm a recovering alcoholic. I'm in recovery. I don't like the stigma of the word alcoholic. We can get to that sometime. I've been to 4 rehabs because I didn't listen to the first 3, and the final one I got sober. 6 years ago, right now, I was in a mental hospital. On the East Coast, because not on a 5150, but they just didn't know what to do with me. And I finally got sober on November 5th, which is next Wednesday, and that'll be my 6th year, God willing.
Congratulations.
And Andrew, you know, and Wendy, you really know what I've been through in my life, and it's been a journey. I wouldn't take any of it back because it got me to this spot. But that's my credentials. I spent way too much money on rehab. Right, Andrew? I mean,
hey, you know, you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, he shot me a look. I felt in my left pocket. But I've been through it, so that's my credentials. Andrew's credentials are spectacular because he is a mental health and addiction expert. And somehow everything does come down to mental health, doesn't it?
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, I think that if you look at the population at large, at some point they're going to have everybody has some sort of mental health crisis, even if it's depression or anxiety. And often those can be the most devastating, and that's where we often see substance abuse coming in, where people start self-medicating, and they get into problems with addiction and abuse.
It's about trouble managing the F word, feelings.
Yeah, it's a lot of it.
And when you start feeling your feelings, you feel weird because you haven't felt them before.
Right.
And you say, what do I need for this? And I think a lot of people, alcoholism and those diseases, it's the only disease where the cure is what got you there. In other words, the instant cure for feeling depressed.
All those awful feelings.
Are the feelings, and also drugs and alcohol. I mean, you think that you think the cure is if I could just get that one thing.
That's a great point, yeah.
Wendy's written a book called The 30-Day Love Detox. Why the?
Rodale Books named my book. What can I say?
Okay.
But the title's just, you know what it is? It's a great book for women aged 18 to 35 who want to become mothers, because it's about our high supply sexual economy and this oversupply of successful women we're seeing, and the partner crunch, and more importantly, how to get it done.
Well, what is love detox?
Well, what it is sort of an anti-hookup culture. It's explaining to people that you can't compartmentalize sex into one place, somebody else being your emotional person, another man being your intellectual stimulation, but you've got to actually learn to practice slow love. The title is based around one study I found that shows that if you have sex within 30 days of meeting somebody, you have about a 90% chance of being broken up within 1 year. If you wait only 31 to 90 days, you got about a 1 in 4 chance of being together a year later. And the statistics get better and better the longer you wait. Because again, it's that big F word, feelings. Learning to tolerate intimate feelings first.
But Andrew, isn't our culture centered around
pleasure,
hooking up, and I got it done, and that's
I mean, I actually watched your clips on the internet, which I thought were fascinating, and it was interesting how you're talking about the economy of sex and women in society, and now all of a sudden women are in this position where through feminism and whatever, women are now entering the sexual relationship marketplace equal to men.
Well, not even equal. What's happened is
or maybe even better off.
Yeah, when women become economically powerful, they put sex out into the culture in high supply. They don't need a man to marry them and support them and their offspring in a contract called marriage. But no one could have anticipated what happens when women rise in power and put sex out into the culture in high supply. A couple things happen to men. It lowers the price of sex, first of all. A lot of their peer men that could be good husbands are sitting in mom's basement playing Xbox till they're 30.
Drinking Mountain Dew.
Exactly. Getting girls to text in naked pictures of themselves because they don't have to be ambitious anymore.
Right.
So young men are losing ambition, and women are also believing the mythology of the fertility clinics that are lying to them and telling them they can have a baby till they're 50. So they're not really putting motherhood first. So those that want to become mothers.
That Xbox success is because women are
exactly. It's because of failure to launch of so many young men.
You know, I see it so often though. It's true. It's this generation below me, or a couple generations below, it's amazing to me. And I don't know, a lot of people have been blaming the economy and kids have to go back with their parents.
It's all about sex. Everything we do on this planet is about procreation.
Well, that's your thesis.
We're gonna crisscross.
Pat, you could get in trouble in this show.
I've been in trouble.
You've been in trouble.
More shows than this one. But doesn't it all come down to let's take domestic violence, for example, where we have I think I read a stat where 4 kids see their parents get killed every day through domestic violence.
3, but that's a bad thing. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's bad. Three American women are murdered by the man they love every single day in America.
Wow.
So is that, when you say don't have sex for 30 days, is that early sexual need or sexual response or sexual appetite, does that lead, I'm not going to say it leads to domestic violence.
No, it leads to making bad choices in relationships.
That's okay.
Sex is a drug. Okay, when you engage in early sex with somebody, your brain is being hit with a cocktail of neurotransmitters and hormones, dopamine being the big one. It is no different than a hit of heroin. And so at that point, you're not making clear decisions about whether somebody can be a good partner for you. So, domestic violence aside, you might just end up with somebody who might not be a good provider, protector, helper, partner, etc.
How do you feel about that? I mean, is sex and a relationship the same thing?
Well, I want to say
a lot of people have polyamorous relationships,
of course.
or
I mean, here's what you should know about
people that just
human
like to have
mating.
sex and they don't like relationships because they have no skills.
But the most important thing is that both partners are honest with each other about really who they are and what they want.
So you're not actually coming out saying monogamy is the thing.
No. I want to make something clear. If you want to go hook up, go hook up. Make sure you discuss that with your partner. Make sure you use protection and have a great life. But if you want to become a mother, this is the clear thing. Right. If you want to become a father, if you want to grow an essence, we just don't have the cultural supports for single parents, and the statistics are really awful for kids of single-parent families still. Now, let me tell you, 44% of American kids are born out of wedlock here in America. Far more are born out of wedlock in places like Sweden and Iceland. But the kids do so much better because there's so much cultural support. There's free daycare. There's free formula. You got a doula come to your house and take care of the new mommy. You can do these living arrangements for single parents where you're all...
And all their friends have single parents.
Exactly. But
basically.
Here we just, it's sort of you're on your own. And there are no government supports whatsoever. And it's a hard walk for many people. So I do talk that, but I want to say about human sexuality, there are surprisingly, and this has always shocked anthropologists, about 50% of us are monogamous for life. We mate for life. I mean, as good as swans, right? Another 50 practice sort of serial monogamy. Now, remember, when Till Death Do Us Part was invented, death was pretty imminent.
Yeah, it was about age 40, right?
Yeah, right.
So,
we're all the Walking Dead here.
as a result of our long lifespans, everybody is probably, not everybody, a good chunk of people are going to have, even the most monogamous, at least 2, if not 3 long stints of monogamy in their lifespan. And in between, there's going to be some serial relationships as we're figuring out who the next long-term mate is.
You can keep track of the names I drop on the show, but Paul McCartney told me that when he wrote "When I'm 64," that was like a number that was unimaginable.
It was considered to be so old, right?
That was the age that people died. Men died.
Yeah, it was a joke when he wrote that.
Yeah.
It was like, "When I'm dead, will you still love me?"
It'd be like today singing
64.
"When I'm 104."
So, is there a solution? Because so many people just want to hook up, make love, till their eyelashes sweat.
The solution is the same. That's a good one. Good picture.
Where'd that come from?
I don't know.
The solution is the same one for people facing addiction issues. And the solution is to stop, breathe, and feel. And that means when you meet another person in your life, that you focus more on the connection with that person, the emotional intimacy, the getting to know who they are and what it's about. And hey, maybe both of your expectations are, let's have wild sex and never talk to each other again. Great, but could we have that conversation? Because here's one of my favorite studies that I found is called the Passion Turning Point Study. And in this study, they looked at onset of first sex with new couples. And they found if 2 things happened before sex, that this was a positive passion turning point. And the 2 things are an expression of feelings. You don't have to say I love you, but it can be I really like you. And also a discussion of what are we tomorrow? What is this? What is it going to be? However, if these 2 things didn't happen, first sex was more often something that evoked apologies and regret, and it was a negative passion turning point.
Yeah, it's taken me a while to get to the spot where I'm in a relationship where you talk about feelings and futures and what should or shouldn't happen and how you respect and love each other and support each other. And I'm actually in one of those now, and it's like a whole different deal.
It's a whole different deal. You talk about feelings, and you get to know the person. You know, the road to intimacy, and this is the part that people are squeamish about, the road to true intimacy is paved with ruptures followed by repair. It is during the repair process, after a fight, after you accidentally hurt someone's feelings, that you get to really see their tender spots, and you get to really know
I've always
people.
believed that you learn more when negative things happen than when positive things happen.
Exactly.
We have learned that, haven't we?
Yeah, we have learned that.
If you know how to make healthy repair.
Our phone number, by the way, is 800. Do people still say 1-800?
No, the one doesn't count anymore.
Thank you. 800-222-5222. It sounds like a taxi number in New York.
Right?
800-222-5222. Give us a call. Talk to Dr.
We actually have a call. You want to jump into
Wendy
one?
Walsh. I
Want to
love
jump into a
calling you
call?
doctor. Sure, let's take a call. Rich in Riverside, right?
Hey, Rich.
Yeah,
You're on KLEAN Radio.
First-time caller. Thank
good.
you, first-time caller, enjoying your show. And I guess my addiction is trying to drive awareness for Alzheimer's.
Oh,
That's a good
another
one.
big one.
Yeah, this is actually the National Month for Alzheimer's Awareness. And I was listening to your talk prior to the show, and, yes, I did still feed her, and yes, I still needed her, but she never made it to 64.
Well, how did you deal? What happened here? Was it your
Alzheimer's, your wife?
My wife died at 59 back in June, and one of my biggest things right now is the fact that this disease does not get out there. And I realized...
what are you doing to take care of yourself? It's one thing, I understand, there's a lot of pain, and Alzheimer's is an awful, awful, horrible disease. It's one of the cruelest things to watch.
1 in 8 Americans.
It's a lot, and it's becoming more common as people are living longer. We're starting to see more brain diseases.
Earlier.
And we're seeing earlier and later, we're getting things like TIAs and little mini strokes in the brain that used to never happen because people would die before the vascularity of the brain would get clogged. But now we're really good at fixing a heart, but we're terrible at fixing the veins in our head. There's no way to do it.
But there's also the living, like Richard, who had to deal with this.
Yep.
And I think a lot of people don't really, is there any place to, I know I've known a couple people whose spouses or mothers have Alzheimer's, and they have no idea, no clue. It's just frustrating.
Who's caring for the caregiver is really the thing.
That's what it is.
And there
Thanks.
just aren't enough, again, going back to cultural supports, I don't want to sound like a freaking socialist, but I am Canadian. And I will say that we just need more, government help for people like you, Rich. I was at a big charity event run by Seth Rogen last week. Were you there? It was a night of a comedy, hilarity for charity, and it was to benefit Alzheimer's because his mother-in-law at the age of 55.
Rich, what are you doing to take care of yourself? Are you
Actually, it's I don't know whether this is healthy. That's what I was hoping to banter with you about. But Mike, the spinach are trying to make something happen, whether it's to get a RT on Twitter or someone to re-mention it on Facebook.
Well, you're on national radio right now.
I mean, one of the things that we find...
That doesn't hurt either.
One of the things that we find often with addiction and issues like this is that you have to be involved in it. You have to keep being involved in it. Even once you get sober, you have to always be reminding yourself of it and working for it. And a lot of people that are addicts end up being in this business of help and rehab and helping people because they've been there, they know what it means, and there's a lot of stigma attached to that.
Isn't there some study that some people, and I'm not talking about you, Rich, but are addicted to the drama of mourning? I mean, they won't give up.
It's called complicated grieving that goes on longer than 6 months, but you're not there yet, Rich. This is all too new for you. And I really commend the fact that you sort of
talking about it.
Not only talking about it, but sort of carrying the torch and leading, because Sigmund Freud called it sublimation. That's taking your own pain and finding others who have similar pains and helping them. So the more you can do to spread the word about Alzheimer's, the better. I think it's good for you. And
I'm encouraged by people wanting to work in fields that have touched them. So, having had that experience and take time for yourself to grieve. But I like that your first thinking is, how do I get more awareness and how do I help people on the backside of this? So.
Rich, thanks for your call and keep up the good work, all right? One of the things that came up this week, and all of this, again, this is Clean Radio. I'm Pat O'Brien. Andrew Spanswick is here, and Dr. Wendy Walsh. I don't know.
I laugh every time you say doctor.
She's corrected me twice tonight. I'm keeping track, by the way. I'm not real happy about it.
I'm reading all the good gossip in your book, by the way. Yeah. I love this book.
You were great on CNN this week when we were talking about these shootings up in Washington.
Yeah.
Andrew
school shootings.
Yeah, and Andrew and I had a long talk about it just privately the other day about these 14-year-old kids, these young kids who don't see consequences, right? Is that what it comes down to?
No, I think that they're in so much pain is what it is, and they have nowhere to reach out. And with this particular young boy, he, there's so, as we're armchair quarterbacks, we always say, where were the warning signs? Where are the warning signs? The warning signs were everywhere, and nobody was paying attention. Here's a kid who had recently been broken up by his girlfriend. That's called an attachment injury, a rupture at a critical moment of need. Then he gets into a fight with a guy, probably over the girl, and he gets suspended, right? If you look at his Twitter feed for the last few weeks, there's lots of rage, lots of anger. He has lots of access to guns, and he's posting pictures of him holding guns all over his Facebook. So you put that together, an adolescent boy, high testosterone, not a lot of impulse control, access to guns, filled with rage, off on suspension, his first day back at school.
How old was he?
I think he just turned 15.
Andrew, what about the 14-year-old mind in this thing?
The frontal lobe is still developing at that age, and so as Wendy was saying, there's a lack of impulse control. So instead of, as you get older, you actually start to reflect on your experiences, and your mind actually gives you an opportunity to think back to what choices you've made. And
go, don't want to do that again.
Right. And so you're more experienced, and your mind is better able to say, hey, don't just do what I impulsively feel like doing right at this minute. Let me think of a better way to solve my problems or get the help I need. And in adolescence, that's not there, and they'll often resort to fantasy type of things, which will include homicidal ideation or wanting to kill people, and they don't have any way of really fixing that. They get fixated on, they go out and they do it impulsively. Yeah. And then you see these kids actually later, then they're in jail, and they're like, that wasn't me. I don't know how that happened, and it didn't feel like it was me making that decision.
And what is it? Because it can't be parenting, can it? Because if it's the development of the brain.
No, in fact, here's what's fascinating to me is that the two closest developmental stages across the entire human lifespan that are most similar are those of a 2-year-old toddler and a teenager. So a toddler has gotten to this stage where they're their body is they're up and they're walking and they're doing things, but they're frustrated because they're not allowed to run into traffic. They're not allowed to jump off. They don't understand. They don't have the mental process to stop themselves. Now, a teenager is very similar. They've got a body that's up and rearing and ready to go and full of hormones, but again, they don't have the development of the prefrontal cortex to stop themselves. Yet, we lock up guns and ammunition so carefully if there's a toddler in the house, but not when there's a teenager in the house.
Well, you should. If you have guns, you should always lock everything up. But
and in separate places. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, not to get biblical, but to get biblical, I'm reading a lot about the early days of Jesus, and when he was 12, he deserted his parents, and he just didn't think they'd be worried about him, and they were looking all over Jerusalem for him. And it's the same thing. He was 12 years old and decided he wanted to do something else, and that's why. But you're saying it's not parental; that it's just the way things are.
Well, I think obviously this guy's parents are grieving. They've suffered a terrible loss right now. So I really hesitate to get into any kind of what the parents could have done. But I think we as a culture, all of us as adults, need to watch our children's social media. We need to follow our kids on Twitter. We need to be their Facebook friend. I don't care what they say. This is not reading their diary.
Say, Mom, don't creep my,
No, this is not reading their diary.
Peers need to be more involved.
And peers need to be more involved. And if they see this stuff, they need to let somebody know.
Yeah.
But again, when you talk about this kid up there in Marysville, was that it? Yeah, Marysville, Washington. Yeah. Mm-hmm. There were warning signs, but I think if you took every teenager, Andrew,
you might see the same thing.
Warning signs, right?
Yeah, and this is one of the things where, once again, we're seeing more and more of this, and a lot of it's copycat kind of behavior. But our society, and it relates back to also what you're just saying about how things are changing. Like what was normal a generation ago, or for our parents' generation, whatever, is completely not valid anymore. And, I talk to young kids today, they come into rehab or whatever, and they've been drinking because they don't know how to deal with their problems, or they've been using drugs and trying to cover up all these feelings and stuff because they don't have outlets for it anymore.
Yeah.
It's like
there's a lot of isolation too. Their close social friends are on a computer screen now.
I mean, everybody's in their phone or on the computer, but they're not really communicating. They're just sort of responding to information that they get. They're not actually processing the information in a way that's helpful to development.
There's almost too much information.
Yeah, and
it's information, but not feelings.
Yeah, it's
not
right.
It's just content.
It's just lots of information. It's overwhelming, and so people don't have time to sit around and think and actually form relationships with people.
And by the way, their parents haven't modeled healthy emotional intelligence either. When parents ask me what's the best way I can get my kid to talk about his feelings, I say just become aware of your own and express them, because then it's modeled. So if feelings are something that are welcome and allowed in a household, at the dinner table, etc., then kids will start to put words to feelings.
We never accepted how was school today? Good.
Yeah,
we never accepted that. What did you learn? Stuff. No, we actually demanded that we talk about it.
Yeah,
and to this day, Sean, he talks about everything.
Sweet Sean.
Sweet Sean is now 27. Isn't that amazing? And your daughter, who I gave her first
teddy bear when she was 6 months old, and now she's in there doing homework. She's in 11th grade.
Down memory lane. And Andrew, I'm sorry I haven't given you a teddy bear yet, but
I got my own.
We have a lot on the docket tonight. Dr. Wendy Walsh is here today. She's a relationship expert, and she's good. She can talk about anything. She's got a great event coming up this Thursday, and we'll get to that when we come back. But also, I want to talk a little bit about domestic violence, because that's what you're an expert in, and unfortunately, we do have experts in domestic violence, and it's a national tragedy. The NFL has brought it. By the way, whatever happened to that subject with the NFL?
Oh, they just gave a nice big check to the National Domestic Violence Hotline.
I know we're going to talk about that, but they don't talk about it much anymore either, and we'll get to that when we come back, as well as this 30-day love detox. We've got to explain to people that relationships are more than just jumping into bed and having a good time.
Absolutely.
Why do you say absolutely?
Because I'm getting married. Pat, you're getting married too, aren't you? No,
we'll be back.
We'll be back in a while.
We'll be back in a little bit. 800-222-5222 is our number. Stay with us. The KLEAN Radio.
Are you addicted to drugs or alcohol, but unable to commit to an inpatient rehab stay? Introducing KLEAN Treatment Center's Outpatient Treatment. This drug and alcohol treatment program is designed specifically for the working professional. Don't let your commitments of running a business, taking care of a child, or maintaining your college classes get in the way of your recovery from addiction. With daytime, evening, or individualized programs, KLEAN's Outpatient Treatment will fit your life. Call now for a free screening. Professional guidance is standing by. This is KLEAN Radio.
Welcome back. I'm Pat O'Brien. Judah's off tonight. Andrew Spanswick is here. And Andrew's, do you ever take any days off?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when
Are you taking a day off to get married?
Hopefully more than a day.
And Wendy Walsh and I have been around long enough. You can actually find us on YouTube. How they do that was a great show, by the way.
It was a great show. How they do that.
We were the first people to actually look at the World Tower bombings and how they got in there and that sort of thing. Anyway, that's another subject. You know, we were talking about relationships, and Wendy's book is the 30-Day Love Detox. I love that "the" on there. Why don't you call me the Pat O'Brien?
The Pat O'Brien.
Yeah.
Well, that's who you are.
I hope I am.
Of course.
But all this comes down, Andrew, to addiction, doesn't it? I mean, mostly all these issues come down to addiction and the attempt at recovery.
Certainly, our mind is set up, as we've been talking about, has a dopamine system and it receives pleasure. And all these things that give us pleasure, like sex, are also mimicked by drugs. And a lot of the reasons that we see people use drugs and alcohol is that they get triggered or introduced to trying to make their feelings feel different by doing outside activities. Drinking and using drugs is a main one. And I it's very common to hear people say, I used to drink and I was okay, and then my wife divorced me and I felt miserable and I drank a whole glass of whiskey and all of a sudden I had figured out a solution to my feelings.
But why do they go, well, I know, but Wendy, why do people just go right to that? I mean, I did, but...
Well, a couple things.
It's an addiction.
One is we have a huge population of people in America who just don't get the love they need as infants and toddlers and grow up to have kind of attachment disorders, if you will. Their attachment style is that they're easily injured in personal relationships, or they avoid intimacy because it's terrifying for them. And then it wasn't modeled for them how to manage their feelings. So they'd have these feelings bubble up inside. Nobody taught them how to put it to words, and they don't have the language to express it. They don't trust that the other person they're going to give it to, these feelings, will be able to tolerate it because they can't tolerate it themselves. So it's easier to just numb that feeling.
Right. Also, we should also point out that alcoholism is a disease. It's a brain disease.
Absolutely.
And the alcoholic brain, mine certainly does, the number that you want is more of everything. And you just have to, there's a solution, and you have to arrest that. And I finally found a spiritual side and a way to figure out how I can get through life without drinking. And I have. Yeah. I'm a much better person, certainly much more handsome.
Of course.
Than I used to be.
Should we jump into this call? We got a call actually on domestic violence and addiction.
Ahead.
It's Amy. Hello, Amy. Welcome to KLEAN Radio.
Hi.
Hi, Amy. How are you? Welcome to the show.
Doing fine. I've spoken to Andrew several times, and I've spoken to you, I think, once, Pat.
How are you doing, Amy?
I think you were on last time I was on as a guest, yeah.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to say that I heard you mention about just a minute ago about how your upbringing can cause you, in a nutshell, dysfunctional thinking, and how you make your decisions on what you do in your life. And I have come from a very colorful domestic violence background as far as my upbringing as well as marriages. I was married to a Middle Eastern man for 4 years, as well as another man that was abusive for 11. And so I wanted to say that, the key, I believe, in my life was getting that professional counseling to strip off the control and manipulation that I used to think was normal, and get professional counseling to help me strip that what I thought was normal thinking and replace it with functional thinking, so that I could make the right decisions in my life.
I see so many things like this. Thank you for calling, Amy. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Amy.
One of the things that I see a lot is that people have all this trauma, and they have this trauma in their life, and they don't really know what to do with it. And so...
And they don't even know it's trauma.
Yeah, they often don't even recognize it as a problem. So,
and they go right back to the scene of the crime in their adult life.
Well,
over and over again.
Don't people too, and we've all done this. I've done it. Get up in the morning and write a script for their day, like how it's going to happen. Then you write the beginning, and then the middle, and then you write the end, and it's always bad. Oh. In other words, your thoughts, you don't have to act on your thoughts. Your thoughts are oftentimes not real.
Well, let me say this. Thoughts are things, and thoughts are manufactured by us. And one of my favorite sayings by my favorite sports psychologist ever, Garrett Kramer, told me this recently. He said, worry is a lie. Insight is the truth. And you cannot have insight when you're worrying.
You're right.
You're right about that. And also, most fears are your ego lying to you, too, right? I mean, if you break down all the... like I mentioned in my book, I'll be back right after this, St. Martin's, right? No, if I mentioned in my book that if I could get back all the time I worried about what I was going to do next and that sort of thing, I'd be 10 years old now. I mean, I just spent too much time worrying about things that weren't going to happen. I made them up.
It's very common in addicts, that they worry a lot, and that constant ruminating thinking, which can actually become anxiety disorders and depression. That's what we mostly see that in.
The thoughts become almost like a blockage, a mental blockage, and getting them. That's why I am thrilled about the growth of the mindfulness movement.
Yes.
There have been some hard scientific studies, even just only 8 weeks of a regular meditation program compared to a control group who didn't meditate, and lots of physical health improvements, as well as positive mood. And I just think mindfulness is the best thing.
I just got into meditation. I've been working. It's hard. I mean, it's not easy to close your mind down.
That's why it's called a practice. But you'll only ever practice.
When I first started, I would breathe in, and then breathe out. And then breathe in. Oh God, did I return that call the other day? And then breathe out. Where's my iPhone right now? And then breathe. But Nick Tatan, who I follow, and you just have to learn how to sit. That's the name of one of his books. You just have to learn how to sit and close your mind up. I want to talk about domestic violence for a minute, because you have a big event coming up on Thursday.
That's right.
That has Marcia Clark.
Former OJ prosecutor, and now best-selling novelist. She's got 3 or 4 great crime thrillers out.
That, really.
Oh yeah, she's an author.
Yeah,
Marcia Clark,
she's great. I love her. Katie Ray Jones, not familiar with her, but
she's the president of the CEO of the National Domestic Violence Hotline,
of which you are the spokesperson.
We're going to announce on Thursday. I guess we'll announce it here. This is the first that I'm about to become the celebrity spokesperson for the National Domestic Violence Hotline, which is the only national organization on the ground serving victims and their families of domestic violence. They have an amazing database of more than 4,000, and they serve in 200 languages, more than 4,000 outreach programs they direct people to. But listen to this. They handle 1,000 calls a day. And yet last year, 77,000 calls went unanswered.
Wow.
So hopefully the NFL is looking to change that, because recently the NFL has chosen to give the National Domestic Violence Hotline a big contribution.
And a lot of the NFL players are for this. Don't think that they're all like Ray Rice and these guys. And also our friend Marcia Gay Harden. Now, I said to Wendy earlier, by the way, I'm the moderator for this for this event, which is great. But I don't know how
the event, Pat.
I don't know how Wendy and Marcia and I will get by without. We tend to laugh a lot when we're together. It's a serious
because
topic.
we had a comedy night a couple of years ago that will always live inside us, and so that's right.
Let's leave it there.
We'll leave it right there.
It's pretty awful. But tell me about it, so people can. How do they find out about it?
So what we're going to do on Thursday night it's actually just a small elite event, and it is underwritten by some very generous sponsors: Retrouve, Luxury Skincare. Hey, Adam Carolla contacted me. He's giving us Mangrias as our signature cocktail. And
on an addiction
yes,
show.
we got Laura Mar Vineyards. And what we're doing is having a group of women of influence. If you are a woman of influence, and I'm serious, that means if you really can reach out to a large group of people, then we would love to have you. But otherwise, it's a small closed event where we're going to have a discussion, a very open discussion about how we can best solve some of these questions. And we're really creating a presence in California, because the National Domestic Violence Hotline is in Austin, Texas. So because bringing me on is moving the conversation to California.
And you're a great spokesperson. Can't get by spokesperson for that. But that's the main thing, isn't it, Andrew? Information about anything. And I think more people learned in the past 3 or 4 months because of the Ray Rice debacle about domestic violence. Ironically, it's the only time we ever, and this really gets me.
It's very
the only
American.
time we ever get to learn about anything, like when Robin Williams commits suicide. My dear friend, who everybody thought he's the only person who could make himself laugh, and and then they talk about that for a day. Then we have Whitney Houston or Michael Jackson or whatever die, and then we talk about that for a day. Domestic violence was a topic A for about 2 weeks.
But we have seen an interesting progression. If you think about it, from O.J. Simpson, where in some ways I believe I covered every minute of that trial as a news reporter back then, the domestic violence piece was almost dismissed. Even though she'd left the pictures of her with the bruises in her safe deposit box, it wasn't the news of the day. Then we get to Chris Brown, and now we've got pictures of Rihanna with actual bruises on her face. It's getting closer to it being a reality and understanding. Then we get to Ray Rice.
Why
and
do
we
you
see
think
actual video of how it happens.
That's what it took, by the way.
This
really
has
looks,
changed the
yeah.
conversation in a big way. I want you to know, Pat, that 1 in 4 American women will become a victim of domestic violence in their lifetime. And every day, 3 women die at the hands of someone they
And
love.
that doesn't count other things like rape. That's 1 in 3. So
Yeah, so
which is another form of violence.
And also the emotional impact on the people watching this, the kids are watching this. We talked about it earlier.
So damaging to the
and
children.
relatives and friends who worry. I mean, the collateral damage on just one episode of domestic violence is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, part of it's socialization. Part of, people that are abused often have been abused themselves. We know that.
It's re-traumas,
So
yeah.
there's a lot of cycle of this, but there's also a lot of drug use and addiction and lowering of inhibitions that leads to violent behavior.
Yeah.
And we know this for a fact. We see it also in sexual abuse cases. 9 out of 10 times, if there's sexual abuse in a family, the perpetrator is an alcoholic or a drug addict.
You're right.
And so their inhibitions are lowered, and they black out. They don't know what they're doing, and it's just a horrible situation.
And I used to say almost. I say every bad thing begins with a drink, but it's almost true. I mean, when you look at these gun shootings or guns at parties or the Palins fighting everybody in the bar, but it all usually begins with some sort of alcohol involved.
Right, and then people just aren't thinking, and they're not making good decisions. They don't have a good brain, if you will. But, Pat, I really think the answer to domestic violence, and we're finally going to evolve it out of our culture completely, Listen, in the Middle Ages, if somebody pissed you off, you just clubbed them on the head and kept going, and now that's not allowed.
Now,
okay?
now we have drones.
Right. Now
now you have the internet. Now you have
the
Twitter.
Internet, yeah,
Right.
you can just
It used
assault
to be
people.
that if you, if your dog, you let your dog poop on the street. It used to be that you could smoke anywhere in any closed space. Okay, we've changed all those things. We're going to change domestic violence. It will evolve out, but it won't happen without the support of men.
Why do women go back?
Well, I want to say this, Pat. We are working hard to change the question from why she stayed to why does he hit. There are many reasons of why she stayed. First of all, women self-define through their relationships. They are bonded. They are in love. This is their identity. He may be their source of financial support. He may be the father of their children. They may have families pressuring them to be together. They may just be in love.
Financial.
This is so common, though, the blaming the victim.
The blaming the victim.
It's what's
I think
happened.
I wasn't
in America.
blaming the victim.
I
I
want
just
to
was
turn it
asking.
to
Don't
why.
turn this on me.
I want to turn it to no. I'm so glad you said that because that's what everyone's thinking,
Right.
and
Yeah.
that gives me a chance to say, listen, why are we raising 1 in 4 of our boys to grow up to be a hitter? What are we doing wrong as parents and as families? And the other thing I think, and I'm going to say this to you guys because you're grown-up men here, I think that there's something missing in our culture where sort of the wise sort of king of the male species is not keeping those young bucks in line.
But I got to
There's
tell you,
something missing
there
that these
is a
young
lot-
men need
but
to be.
it's not-
There's a lot of domestic violence against men as well. It's
Yes,
not just
no,
all
we don't-
women, and we always tend to think that domestic violence is always towards. But they have shows like Wives with Knives Out.
Yeah,
that's not
No,
an accident.
Absolutely, absolutely. I host a show on Investigation Discovery called Happily Never After, and it's about brides or grooms that kill each other. Statistically, the overwhelming amount of victims tend to be female, but that doesn't mean we were dismissing.
There's a lot
male
of
victims. I wanna
underreporting,
make
though,
that
right?
clear.
Like men don't feel like they can come forward and talk about them. They feel like they should be able to handle it
Exactly.
themselves.
And nobody says, why did he stay?
Yeah.
But I mean,
Right?
well, quit picking
My
on
mother
me.
asked me that once, but
Quit picking on me. You know what I meant. Now
I
listen.
am not picking on you. I'm so glad you asked that question because that's what we're.
Yeah,
that's the
but
question
I
that's out
mean,
there.
what happens to talking it out? I mean, what happens to an argument? And I've known, and you've known, Andrew, people that have just started talking, and all of a sudden he grabs her arm or she grabs his arm,
Right.
and then all of a sudden there's a bruise, and all of a sudden there's a picture, and all of a sudden there's a 911 call.
As Andrew said, in a good chunk of the cases, there's drug or alcohol involved, so there's less impulse control. But secondly, people don't have the conflict resolution skills that they need to have. They need to talk about their feelings, and they need to have compassion. You know, being in a relationship isn't about winning every war. You should think that the winner should be the relationship, and sometimes that means to bite your tongue.
So that goes back to your books, to your book on the 30-day
Love Detox.
We actually got another call about.
I want to talk about it, but that's what you were talking about, is getting that foundation going in.
Getting the foundation of intimacy.
Yeah, we got this guy, Rob from Portland.
Oh, Rob.
Hello.
Welcome to Clean Radio. How are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. On the flip side of that, I've noticed when you guys were talking, it's a lot about what does she do, and I know that in this country there's a lot of help for women who are in domestic violence situations. I myself was with a wife for 4 years until she hit me over the head with a laptop.
Oh, my goodness.
And
So sorry.
prior to that, she had hit me with a teapot, and I said, I can handle this, I can handle this. And then she hit me with a frying pan, no joke. I can handle this, I can handle this.
So you have no part in this?
No, it's not about part in it or not. Hey, Rob, listen, I
Go
want to
ahead,
say
let me
something.
I want to point out real quick. Let me point out real quick on that.
Yeah.
I want to point out that he asked me, what did I do wrong?
Exactly.
And I'm going to say right now, I didn't do anything wrong. I
Yeah.
was being mean, and it pissed her off for whatever reason it pissed her off. That's all on her.
Yeah.
And she took it out on me for whatever reason. And it took 3 or 4 times before I went, okay, no. I'm not doing this anymore. I can't do that.
Right. Well,
And
Rob, I want you to know that you
Wow.
can call the National Domestic Violence Hotline. You can call them. They have all kinds of local resources, even there in Portland, to support you. No. Male victims as well. Please.
Well, when I left, there was no shelter. The shelters are not for men. I got news. What you may believe is not.
So how did you Rob? How did you
What
resolve
worked for
this?
you, Rob? How did you manage?
I moved from Portland, Oregon, where I was married, to Arizona because that's where I had family who would take me in. And I just basically called them and said, hey, I just walked out on my wife because she broke a laptop over my head. So I don't exactly know what to do. And they said, dude, come on, we'll get you a bus home and you can hang out with us. And I was down there for until I healed. I'm way healed now.
Right. But I mean,
I'm much stronger. And, you know.
But the geographic's not always a solution for everybody. Right?
Yeah, you
No,
can't
he
always
needs to
leave
walk
sometimes.
with it.
And if there's
Right.
children involved, it gets more complicated as well.
Right.
So.
And were you able to get some counseling help?
No, not necessarily. I did it myself. I wasn't able to find any domestic violence for men help. And I was going to say, anybody out there listening who happens to hear this, if you can set up a domestic violence for men who are abused, that would be awesome because there's not a that I could find easily. When looking, I need help. I got to find it.
You know what, Rob? We're gonna do some.
All over the place.
Rob, we're gonna go out there and we're gonna try and find some possibilities for people. And if you go to Facebook.com/Clean Radio, we'll list some services because I do know there's some out there that we've worked with in the past.
There are, and they refer at the National Domestic Violence Hotline.
Right.
Too.
And as national spokesperson for this, are they going to go ahead, Rob?
We lost them.
All right.
Sorry.
So
dear.
are they going to do something about? Well, it'll be both sides then, right?
Of course, we service all victims and their families. We don't discriminate by gender at all.
What was the number on the unanswered phone calls?
77,000 calls a year go unanswered.
And you know what's sad about that is that we've seen in study after study that the time that it takes for someone to call when they have a problem can be as long as 7 years.
Yeah, and here's another stat that's kind of interesting.
They're finally calling, and then there's no one to answer.
We
It's
really
tough.
shouldn't judge. Look, this man who bravely just told us his story told us that he was assaulted 4 times before he got brave enough to leave.
Yeah.
The average woman in a domestic violence situation leaves 6 times before she's able to leave the relationship permanently. So it is not for us to judge the timing of anything. It is just to support the victims.
Yeah, working with a lot of clients over time, I find that people often, they don't really know what's going on in the moment. It's so hard to get perspective when you're wrapped up in something. And
Well, that's
When you're
anger
in
management,
crisis,
right?
yeah.
But like Rob was saying, I got hit with a pot and I thought I could handle that. It's like
Right.
this, instead of saying, I got hit with a pot and having the ability to know that there's ways to resolve that issue other than just dismissing it as not a problem.
Right.
I'm just curious if he was just sitting around and she came over and hit him, or Was it
Well,
in the middle of
you
an
know, it's-
argument?
Well, I'm sure it was in the middle of an argument, but the point
nobody
is,
ever
Everybody jumped on
shouldn't
me.
move to violence.
Nobody ever
Yeah.
deserves to be hit by something. That's
Yeah.
like a boundary that we should all have.
Yeah.
You know, or maybe some people do deserve to be hit by.
Except for some reason, we allow people in our culture to hit small children. I don't get that part.
Yeah,
Well, I'll tell you
we
what.
it's
start out
certainly
with
not a good
corporal
precedent.
punishment.
Well, I'm Pat O'Brien. Andrew Spanswick is here. Dr. Wendy Walsh is here, who can talk about anything, to be honest with you.
Because I like to talk.
I want to get into this whole. How much time do we have here? When we're talking about these shootings up
We're
in
getting
up,
tight.
and what
Sorry, go ahead.
up in Washington,
Yes.
and just a quick thing on bullying, because Monica Lewinsky has come out and talked about bullying being on.
And by
on
the
Twitter.
way, isn't she poised and doesn't she look great? And 16 years after being so, she calls herself ground zero or patient zero for
Right.
online bullying. After that trauma that she went through, I am just so pleased. I applaud what she's doing.
Well,
And
both
talking
of them
about
came out
anti-bullying.
okay too. Bill Clinton came
Yeah,
out
he
all
came
right.
out all right too.
Too.
But listen, come on. She was a 22-year-old child, practically. Did she actually have an ability to say no? Of course not. She would have lost her internship or whatever. So she put it all into this glow of, oh, I'm in love with my boss. So anyway, it was
Why
not
now,
a fair
though?
game.
I like Monica. Have you ever met her? She's very nice.
No,
Yeah.
I've never met her, but why now? Who knows the actual answer to it? But I'd say
2 weeks
finally,
before the midterm.
she's ready. No, you're thinking this is all political. I just think that was National Unity Day, and that's when she came out
Right.
because they're
Very brave to do it, though, because if anyone's going to be made fun of, it's going to be Monica Lewinsky, right?
I mean, it's another example where we blame the victim. I mean, she was
Exactly.
obviously coerced by someone with a
He
lot
was
of power.
52 years old, and he was the most powerful man in the country, and she was a 22-year-old intern. He had no right. She was not his psychological peer,
Who
not
was
his
that
biological
other woman
peer.
that saved the dress and told her, what was her name? Oh, no.
Oh,
I hate
Linda
brain-
something, right?
Yeah,
No.
Linda. I'm sorry.
Oh,
brain
Linda Hunt? What? No, not Linda Hunt. Linda.
That's how they ask you.
Yeah, she was very
NCIS.
small, and she walked in and grabbed the dress.
But the point is that all these things all do come under what this show is about, and that is addiction and recovery and mental health.
Mm-hmm.
But bullying is a big deal, and the internet, real briefly, Wendy, because I know you like to talk about this, the internet has only fueled that. The fuse has been
Okay,
the internet
here's
because
the problem.
they're anonymous people who are
And also,
morons and cowards.
Kids are getting online too early. They're not given the skills, the technological, social skills, the etiquette skills, because their parents don't have them.
Mm-hmm.
So I regularly have meetings I have a 5th grader and her friends, and she'll be crying because somebody said something on Facebook or put an Instagram, whatever, and I have to pull them all together and say, here's how we do it. In the olden days, we taught our kids how to have good telephone manners. But now we need to teach our kids how to have good internet manners. And if we don't know how to do that, we need to reach out and find out how to do that.
But it gives people out there a sense of power to be able to say something to, let's say, a celebrity and get away with it.
But also, I think people think they are celebrities. Like, everybody thinks that they're really
culture
important.
Of narcissism online.
we
Yeah, they
definitely-
count how many likes they get for every picture they put up.
Yeah, I mean,
You
this
know,
concept that people think they should disclose everything about their life on a public web page is just mind blowing to me. It's like, really? That's you can't see that? Maybe that's not a great idea.
You know what a narcissist is?
What?
Somebody who looks better than you. I love
Exactly.
that. So, to wrap things up here quickly, Thursday night, do we know where yet? And how do people find this event?
We know where. If you are a woman of influence and seriously you have a big following and you think you could help us spread the word and support the National Domestic Violence Hotline, then please contact me through my website, drwendywalsh.com.
And Andrew, you want to run down how they can reach us?
Yeah, absolutely. You can reach us at 888-601-6040. That's 888-601-6040. We have people available 24 hours, 7 days a week that can deal with everything from addiction to domestic violence and referrals and whatever you need. So it's a great support outreach line that we have.
And by the way, picking up that phone is very important when you have a problem. We learned that in recovery. You learn that in AA. You learn that, and not supposed to say that, but you learn that in recovery, that by picking up a phone and talking to somebody, could be the life or death thing, or just making a bad night. This has been a lively show. Wendy Walsh, I love you. You're such a dear friend,
Pat.
and you've been so loyal to me. And we worked. We did a lot of stuff together. We had a lot of fun.
You're an easy person to love.
Thank you. We've never had a bad moment. Andrew, I guess I'll see you around, right?
Yeah, we're going to be around.
We're going to be around for a while.
We're going to be around.
Before we go, I want to give you a line that was in The Wizard of Oz when Frank Baum wrote this book. a line appeared in the book that did not appear in the movie, and I have no idea why it didn't appear in the movie. And that was when Dorothy was looking for a way to get out of Oz, there was this big balloon waiting for her, and she pointed up to it, and she said, gee, Mr. Wizard, is that balloon, can it really take me back to Kansas? And he said to her, well, Dorothy, we don't know if anything really works until afterwards. And so we ask you to not wait for the afterward, to try to make things work before the afterward is horrible, and hope that the afterward is always good. Thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you, Wendy. We'll see you around the corner. Thank you, Andrew, as always. Yep. And we're here for you. Again, the line after the show is 888-601-6040. 888-601-6040. And remember, there is a solution to just about everything. Just don't try not to get to that point. Wendy, thank you.
Thank you.
Andrew, we'll see you around.
Thank you, Pat.
I'm Pat O'Brien. We'll see you next week. Thanks for joining us on KLEAN Radio, KLEANradio.com or Facebook.com/KLEAN Radio. We're here all the time for you. We're here to help you. There is a solution. Believe me, there is. If I can do it, anybody can. We'll see you next time.
Seem a little mad, but don't you know that no life can always be in danger?
Are you addicted to drugs or alcohol but unable to commit to an inpatient rehab stay? Introducing KLEAN Treatment Center's Outpatient Treatment. This drug and alcohol treatment program is designed specifically for the working professional. Don't let your commitments of running a business, taking care of a child, or maintaining your college classes get in the way of your recovery from addiction. With daytime, evening, or individualized programs, KLEAN's Outpatient Treatment will fit your life. Call now for a free screening. Professional guidance is standing by.